My wife was cheating with our accountant, and when I found out she was planning to evict me from our $1.2 million house to hide her affair, I didn't expect the dispute over our $350, $0 inheritance, and the legal battle over the property to reveal a shocking betrayal that changed everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this kind of story, but life has a funny way of throwing you into situations you'd never expect. A few months ago, I was just your average guy, married to Lisa for about 10 years, living in a really nice house worth around $1.2 million. We had our issues, sure, but I always thought we were solid. She was beautiful, confident, and had this bitchy attitude that I guess I liked because it kind of kept her interesting. She was the type of woman who could lie straight to your face and make you doubt your own eyes, but I never suspected she'd do something so cruel. The signs started a few months back. Lisa became more distant, spending more time at work or with friends, but I noticed her phone was always locked in. She'd get defensive when I asked about texts or calls. She'd suddenly dress up more often, wear new jewelry, and I'd catch her sneaking around with her phone in her hand, looking guilty if I got close. I brushed it off at first, telling myself I was just paranoid. But then I found her phone one night by accident. She left it on the kitchen counter when she went to the bathroom. I saw a message from someone named Alex, something about a late-night meetup and a flirty exchange that made my stomach tighten. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started digging. I looked through her messages, her emails, her bank statements. That's when I found out she was seeing our accountant, Mark. I knew Mark well. He's been handling our taxes and investments for years. I never liked him much. He always had that slick, smarmy look about him, but I never suspected he'd be involved like this. The texts between Lisa and Mark were filled with explicit talk, plans to meet, and even mentions of how they'd keep this secret from me. The worst part, Lisa was lying about everything. She told me she was just friends with Mark, that he was like family, and that I was overreacting. At that point, my world started to crumble. I felt sick, betrayed, and furious. I had trusted her for so long, and now I realized she'd been planning to cheat on me for months, probably longer. I knew I had to confront her. I wanted answers, but I also knew that this was just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper I looked, the more I uncovered. She had been planning to evict me from the house, our house, worth over $1 million, so she could hide her affair. I was stunned. She'd been secretly trying to buy me out, or worse, kick me out so she could run off with Mark and her new lover's life. That night I sat her down in the living room. Her face was cold, her eyes had that bitchy glint I'd seen so many times before. When I told her I knew everything, she shrugged, smirked, and told me I was overreacting. She claimed she was just talking to Mark about business, that I was imagining things, that I was paranoid. But I had the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, messages, and I threw it all in her face. She looked furious, then frustrated, then just started lying even more. Said I was jealous, insecure, that she was just having some fun, that I had no right to control her. That's when I realized that her excuses were as fake as her smile. The emotional hit me hard. I was furious, devastated, and a little lost. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, but now I felt like I was living with a stranger. The pain of betrayal hit deep, especially since I'd always been the one trying to keep everything together, paying the bills, managing the house, trying to be a good husband. And now, here I was, realizing that all those years of effort might have been wasted. I kept thinking about the house, the inheritance, the future I'd imagined that was now crumbling before my eyes. I didn't understand how she could lie so easily, how she could betray me like this and still act like the victim. I knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't stay silent, but I also knew this wasn't just about the affair. It was about the money, the house, the inheritance. Lisa had been angling for a way to take everything from me, and I wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. I started thinking about my options, legal ones, financial ones, ways to expose her lies and protect what's mine. I didn't want to just walk away, not without making her pay for what she'd done, for the hurt she caused. That night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, plotting my next move. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, and I knew that if I left her to her own devices, she'd probably try to take everything I worked for. I had to be smart, strategic. I needed leverage, something she didn't see coming. I decided I'd gather all the evidence, confront her publicly if I had to, and fight to keep what's rightfully mine. This wasn't just about love or betrayal anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life from someone who'd lied and cheated her way into my house and my trust. And that's where I am now, waiting, watching, planning. I have no idea how this will end, but I do know one thing. I'm not going down without a fight. The next few days after I uncovered, everything felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was stuck in this weird limbo, caught between shock, anger, and a sickening sense of betrayal. I went over every detail in my head, trying to figure out how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with this for so long. Lisa was still acting like she was the victim, bitching about how I was accusing her of crazy things, how I was jealous and paranoid. She kept spinning stories, lying through her teeth, pretending like I was the problem. But I knew better now. I saw her true face. I decided I needed to hit her where it hurt, her pride, her lies, her plans to take everything I had. So I started quietly gathering more evidence. I installed a hidden camera in the house, just a small one in the living room where she'd spend most of her time. I wanted to catch her in the act, see if she'd slip up. Meanwhile, I made sure all my financial documents were in order, and I contacted a lawyer. I wasn't just going to sit around and be played for a fool. I needed a strategy to protect my inheritance, my assets, and the house. One afternoon, Lisa was in her usual bitchy mood, throwing tantrums about how I was harassing her. She snapped at me, calling me insecure and pathetic. That's when I decided to confront her directly about her plans. I told her I knew about her scheme to evict me, to kick me out of the house so she could run off with Mark and her new lover. Her face went blank for a second, then she started to lie again, denying everything, claiming I was crazy, that I was seeing things, and that I was jealous of Mark because he's successful. She threw a fit, screaming about how I was ruining her life and that I had no right to control her. But I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. I pulled out the evidence, the texts, the bank statements, and told her I had everything documented. Her eyes flashed with anger and she tried to deny the obvious. I told her I was going to see a lawyer and that I wasn't leaving her in peace until I got the truth. That's when she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining her life, and insisting she'd never cheat on me. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she desperately clung to her lies. It was almost pathetic, but underneath all that I felt nothing but cold fury. I realized she'd been planning this for a while. She'd already made up her mind to betray me, to take everything I'd worked for. The house, the inheritance, everything. And she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate just to get it all. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. It hurt more than I thought it would, seeing her like this, hearing her lie so effortlessly, knowing she'd been screwing around with Mark for months. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at my phone, thinking about what I had to do next. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to protect what was mine, and I had to make her pay for the pain she caused. I decided to confront her again, but this time with a different approach. I was going to lay everything out, my evidence, my plan to take legal action, and make her realize I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling like I was just some fool who believed in love. In the meantime, I set up a plan to get her to reveal her true intentions. I told her I was considering selling the house, that I was fed up with her lies, and that I was going to consult with a lawyer about my rights. She freaked out, of course, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining everything, that I was destroying her life, but I didn't care anymore. I knew this was just her way of trying to manipulate me into backing down. I had already made up my mind. I was going to fight, no matter what it took. I also started secretly talking to some friends and family, testing the waters, seeing if anyone knew more about her plans or about Mark. I wanted to get a clearer picture of her scheme, and I needed allies. The more I dug, the more I realized she'd been lying about her finances, pretending she didn't have any money saved up, but I found out she'd been secretly stashing cash and even talking to a lawyer about how to get rid of me legally. That was the moment I knew she'd stop at nothing to get what she wanted. I felt like I was caught in a trap I couldn't escape from, but I also knew that I wasn't going down without a fight. I had enough evidence now, enough to blow her whole plan apart, and I was ready to do whatever it took to protect what's mine. That's where I'm standing now, with my plans in motion, waiting for the next move, knowing that things are about to get a lot messier. I don't know how this will turn out, but I do know one thing: she's not going to ruin me without a fight. Over the next week, everything started to spiral even further out of control. I kept digging into her financials, trying to understand just how deep her lies went. Turns out, Lisa had been planning her escape for months. She had a secret savings account with over $50, $0 hidden away, and she'd been talking to a lawyer about how to transfer the house title without me noticing. I wasn't just some naive husband anymore. I was starting to see the full picture of her betrayal. I also installed a second hidden camera in the bedroom, just to catch her in the act if she slipped up again. The first night after that, I caught her sneaking out of the house late at night, texting someone on her phone. I couldn't see who it was at first, but I managed to zoom in and read a message. "Tonight's the night. We're finally free." That was the moment I realized she'd been planning her escape for real, probably with Mark or whoever her new lover was. It hit me hard. I'd been so focused on the legal and financial stuff that I'd almost forgotten about the emotional betrayal. I started to feel a mix of anger and sadness. Anger at her lies, at her betrayal, but also sadness because I'd loved her, or at least I thought I did. I felt humiliated that I'd trusted her for so long, only to find out she'd been screwing around behind my back, plotting to leave me with nothing. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this, but I also didn't want to jump to conclusions without more proof. So I decided to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I brought my lawyer over to look at the property documents and the bank statements I'd collected. We discussed my options: how to freeze the house's title, how to make sure she couldn't just transfer everything without me noticing. My lawyer warned me that Lisa might try to claim I was trying to control her, that she could threaten to sue me for harassment or wrongful eviction. But I told him I was prepared to fight all the way. I was done playing nice. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like she was the victim. She'd scream about how I was accusing her of stuff she didn't do, how I was jealous and paranoid. She even went as far as to say I was trying to control her, which was laughable. I knew her game now. She'd been trying to manipulate me into backing down, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I kept the evidence close: screenshots, emails, even recordings of her voice when she was lying. One day, she had the nerve to accuse me of ruining her life, while she sat there with her bitchy smirk, pretending she hadn't been planning her exit all along. I told her flat out that I knew about her secret account, her lawyer, her plans to evict me, and that I was ready to fight for my rights. That's when she finally cracked a little. Her face went pale, and she started to scream that I was crazy, that I was destroying her, and accused me of trying to control her because I'm insecure. I just looked at her and said, "You've been lying from the start. I don't care what you say anymore. I'm taking back what's mine." The emotional toll was starting to wear me down. I'd gone from being the loving husband to a guy who was fighting to keep his life from falling apart. The betrayal hurt more than I could say, especially knowing she'd been screwing around with Mark, probably planning her escape even while pretending everything was fine. Every time I saw her smirk or her fake tears, I felt like I was losing my mind. But I also knew I had to stay strong. If I didn't, she'd walk all over me, take everything I worked for, and leave me with nothing. One thing I realized during this whole mess: Lisa was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to spin her lies, how to make herself look innocent while hiding her true intentions. She'd tell her friends I was crazy, that I was accusing her of stuff she didn't do, just to turn people against me. But I didn't care about her lies anymore. I had enough proof to take legal action, and I was ready to do it. The more I dug, the more I saw how deep her treachery went. so I started making moves. I contacted a lawyer to prepare the paperwork for a legal battle over the house, the inheritance, and her attempts to evict me. I also reached out to the bank to put a freeze on her secret account, just in case she tried to drain it before I could get a hold of the money. I knew she'd play dirty, but I was prepared for that. I also started secretly talking to a real estate agent about the possibility of selling the house if it came to that. I couldn't let her take everything without a fight. I kept my cool, even when she came storming into the house, screaming and crying, pretending to be the victim. I'd just stare at her, calm and collected, knowing I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the support to win this. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, her fake tears. I just wanted to reclaim my life, my house, my inheritance. I knew this was going to get worse before it got better, but I was ready for whatever came next. I wasn't going down without a fight. The tension in the house reached a boiling point. Every day, Lisa's manipulative games became more aggressive. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of destroying her life, and cry so convincingly I almost started to doubt myself. But I stayed grounded, relying on the evidence I had amassed. I knew her tricks. She'd lie, spin stories, and try to guilt me into backing down. Still, I could see through her act now. Her tears were fake, her words carefully calculated. She wanted to keep the house, keep her money, and walk away clean with her new lover, Mark, probably on a beach somewhere by now. One afternoon, she stormed into the living room, her face flushed with anger. "You're ruining everything," she spat. "You're just jealous because I don't want to be married to a loser like you anymore. I've got plans, and you're not part of them." She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, knowing she was pushing me to the edge. I looked her straight in the eyes and calmly said, "I know about your secret account. I know about the lawyer you've been talking to. I know you're planning to take the house from under me, and I'm not going to let you do that." That was the moment I saw her crack. Her facade of confidence shattered just a little. She tried to deny everything, but I had the proof, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, and recorded conversations. I told her I was filing for legal separation, that I was going to stop her from evicting me, and that I'd fight her all the way to keep what's mine. Her eyes flashed with panic, but she quickly masked it with more lies. "You're just a jealous, insecure little man," she hissed. "You don't own anything here. I can do whatever I want." But I knew better. I had the law on my side now, and I had no intention of backing down. I called my lawyer that same day, and he started preparing the paperwork for an injunction to prevent her from transferring the house or draining her accounts. I also had him draft a formal notice of my intentions to contest her plans to evict me. I was finally taking control of the situation. Lisa's attitude shifted from bitchy to desperate. She started throwing more tantrums, screaming, crying, trying to guilt-trip me into backing off. But I was done being manipulated. The thing that really shook me, though, was the realization of how far she was willing to go. She was planning her escape, her new life, while pretending to be the perfect wife. She'd been lying to everyone, her friends, her family, even me. I found out she'd already spoken to a lawyer about how to transfer the property without me noticing, and she'd been secretly saving money in her hidden account for months. The betrayal cut deep. I felt like I'd been, and I wondered how I could have been so blind for so long. Meanwhile, I kept my cool around her, even when she was throwing her fits. I knew that if I lost my temper or showed weakness, she'd use it against me. So I stayed calm, collected, and focused on my legal strategy. I made sure all my documents were in order, and I started preparing to fight her in court if it came to that. I also reached out to some friends who knew her well, just to get additional insight into her plans and to have allies in this mess. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she'd been lying and manipulating me from the start. One night, I sat alone in my office, reviewing everything I had gathered. I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger because I'd been betrayed so thoroughly, and relief because I finally had the upper hand. I knew she was planning to run away with Mark, with the house and the inheritance, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I'd fought for this house for years, and I wasn't about to let her steal it all from under me. This was my life, my property, my inheritance, and I was going to protect what's mine. I also made a decision. I was going to confront her one last time, face to face, with all the evidence laid out. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore, that I was done playing her game. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, and her fake tears. From now on, I was taking control. I was going to show her that her plans to cheat and run wouldn't succeed without consequences. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, and my sanity. The next morning, I woke up knowing that this was the beginning of the end. I was ready to face whatever came next, whether it was legal battles, her tantrums, or her desperate attempts to manipulate me again. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I had the resolve. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I built, not without a fight. The confrontation I prepared for finally happened. A few days later, I called Lisa into the living room, told her I had enough evidence, screenshots, bank statements, recordings, and that she could no longer deny what she'd been doing. Her face was a mix of anger and panic. She tried to act calm at first, but I saw her eyes flicker with guilt and desperation when I laid everything out on the table. I told her I was filing for a legal injunction against her, that I was going to stop her from transferring the house or draining her accounts. Her bitchy smirk was replaced by a look of pure rage. She started to scream about how I was ruining her life, how she loved Mark, how she'd do anything to get away from me. She called me insecure, jealous, and accused me of trying to control her because I'm just a weak man. I just stood there calm, watching her lose her composure. I told her she was a liar, that I knew about her secret account, her lawyer, her plans to leave me with nothing. I said I was done playing her game and that she'd have to face the consequences. That's when she broke down completely. She started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, claiming I was destroying her life, that I was crazy, and that she'd never cheat on me. She begged me to drop the lawsuit, saying she'd do anything to make it right, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she'd push me to the edge, and now I was fighting back. I explained I was going to take her to court, contest her plans, and make sure she couldn't just walk away with the house or the inheritance she'd been scheming for. Her reaction was classic. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was abusive, that I was trying to control her, and that I was jealous of her happiness. I saw right through her now. She was just desperate, trying everything she could to keep her lies intact. I told her I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I was done being the naive husband who believed her bullshit. I had the evidence, the law, and I was ready to fight for what's mine. That afternoon, I went straight to the lawyer's office to file the paperwork. I wanted to make sure she couldn't transfer the house or drain her secret account before I could get a court order. I also contacted the bank to freeze her assets, just in case. I knew she'd try to do something sneaky, but I was prepared. I also started looking into selling the house if needed to get my inheritance back. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior got even more erratic. She was threatening me, screaming, throwing things around the house. She accused me of ruining her life, but I just kept my cool. I knew her game now. She was desperate, and her tears and tantrums were just her way of trying to manipulate the situation. I refused to give her that power anymore. I stayed calm, collected, and focused on my legal plan. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had the upper hand, and anger because I'd been played for so long. I kept thinking about how she'd lied, how she'd planned to leave me with nothing, and how she'd been screwing Mark behind my back. It all felt like a punch to the gut, like I'd been completely by the woman I thought I knew, but I also knew I was done being the victim. This was my fight now. I wasn't going to let her take everything I had worked for. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and a clear plan. I was going to protect my inheritance, my house, and my peace of mind. No matter what, I was determined to come out of this stronger. I'd learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who's really willing to fight for what's theirs. And I was ready to do just that. The legal battle dragged on for months, and during that time, Lisa's true colors kept revealing themselves. She became more frantic, throwing fits and making false accusations, but I held my ground. I had the evidence, the law, and the support I needed. I focused on protecting my rights, and slowly but surely, I saw the tide turning in my favor. The court issued an injunction preventing her from transferring the house or accessing her secret accounts, and the bank confirmed they'd frozen her assets. It was a small victory, but one that felt like I had finally taken back control of my life. Throughout it all, I couldn't help but reflect on how blind I'd been for so long. I thought I knew my wife, but she was a master manipulator. She lied, cheated, and planned her escape behind my back. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered how I ever trusted her, but with each passing day I felt stronger. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to her lies or her schemes. I had built something real, my inheritance, my house, my reputation, and I was determined to keep it. In the end, Lisa's schemes unraveled completely. The court awarded me full ownership of the house, and she was ordered to pay back the money she'd secretly stashed and to cover part of my legal expenses. She tried to fight it, claiming I was harassing her, but her words fell flat against the mountain of proof I had compiled. Watching her squirm as the judge read the verdict was almost satisfying, but the real relief came when I realized I could finally put this nightmare behind me. The aftermath was tough. I had to sell the house to cover debts and her legal bills, but I managed to keep most of my inheritance intact. I moved into a smaller place, starting fresh and gradually rebuilding my life. I learned a lot from this experience about trust, betrayal, and the importance of protecting what's yours. I also learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, but that you have the strength to fight back and come out stronger. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know I can't change the past. What matters now is the future. I'm healthier, more cautious, and more aware of the importance of honesty and integrity in relationships. My advice to anyone going through something similar: trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Betrayal can break you, but it can also teach you who you really are, strong enough to survive and resilient enough to start over.